This video is a paid
promotion
by Paradox Interactive. You may now all go down into the comments section and tell me how much of a sellout I am. Oh, and this video isn't intended for children either. There. That should keep the FTC happy on both fronts. Link is in the description down below. Knights of Pen and Paper 2 is a free-to-play mobile game that is available on the iOS and Android stores. That was obviously so good the first time they decided to make another one. Then again, when you can put a critically acclaimed turn-based retro-style pixel art adventure that simulates the classic pen and paper role-playing experience in your product description, well, you clearly have some bragging rights, don't you? Oh, and it's also available on Steam as well, just in case you're allergic to mobiles. Thankfully, I am not, so I'll be covering said version for this video. The game basically plays out like how a traditional pen and paper role-playing game would, where you have the Dungeon Master laying out the story and inventing as many possible ways to brutally murder the entire party. Such as making an endless number of bandits spawn and oh my god, will you just knock it off already? The combat is your standard turn-based affair and navigation around the world is fairly simple. Now, at this point in time, I would give you a really long, boring review video, but instead I decided to recount a playthrough of the game I started and pick out all the interesting bits. Besides, I need to get this video as close to 10 minutes as I possibly can somehow, right? I had already played through the game for a few hours already, so at least you'll be getting the version that doesn't involve me getting lost or confused. Our story begins like any good adventures do, with that one guy who brings his overpowered character to the table and causes a Tarrasque to yeet itself. For those of you that don't know what a Tarrasque is, it's the D&D equivalent of a party-wide laxative whenever a Dungeon Master so much as mentions it. So after that guy leaves in a huff because how dare you suggest he use an earlier rule edition, the Dungeon Master goes to Chris Chan levels of pettiness and makes him the main villain in a new adventure, which is where your new party comes in. There are lots of people to choose from, each with their own effect on the game, but I personally took a liking to the goth and the cheerleader. Not only because I can imagine Rennie and Blazy in those roles, whilst wearing stupid hats, but I also liked their passive abilities as well. The goth can be resurrected for free, and the cheerleader gives everyone free health and energy when she blocks, which totally isn't broken, and I didn't abuse at any point. Given I had started with a mage and a paladin last time, I decided to go with a warrior and a cleric this time, because sadly you can't have a party with nothing but DPS unless you all want to die. The adventure starts in the usual small village that is present in any given RPG, and having run through the tutorial again, because apparently I'm that much of an idiot that I needed to do it a second time, we move on to the next cliche thing, killing rat traps. Yeah, I forgot to mention this game doesn't take itself too seriously and makes a lot of jokes and references to pen and paper RPGs. Though I feel like a lot of the jokes seem to be aimed more at MMORPGs, as there aren't any jokes about drop the dice or you keep rolling nat 20s on skill checks that are really, really inconsequential and kind of pointless. Anyway, we then headed out to the meadows where we had to take out a couple of troglodytes who were having a bubble party in the river. Can we just say that they were sitting there farting? Then again, it's just as well as it was troglodytes, because if it was kobolds, then I would never be able to clear that quest. Because kobolds are just too damn adorable! After helping out some local noobs and doing that one quest with the religious undertones with a surprisingly difficult snake enemy, well, it would have been difficult if my warrior didn't stun lock it into submission and my cleric didn't learn that totally not overpowered divine judgment spell, we headed off to our next destination, the Vault. Which was such an obvious reference that I completely missed it the first time around. I mean, seriously, it's right there! While we were there, we ended up fighting an undead cashier, during which I totally didn't start abusing the cheerleader's special ability, and then promptly stole the cashier's wallet after he had died. No, seriously, one of them dropped the wallet item, which may explain what the game meant by item bonuses for gold drops later on. Eventually we met with the boss of this area. Some unfortunate dude who'd been summoned but his face had all been disfigured, so now he was angry at the world or something. Being adventurers, we went into that fight in which we promptly and brutally kicked the living shit out of him. You thought I was gonna say he kicked the shit out of me, didn't you? After having cheated the DM out of probably 20 minutes worth of encounters, we headed back to the village and gained the ability to summon another party member! Last time I got here I just picked someone at random, but this time I decided to go with the Surfer. Mostly because I wanted someone to represent Mike said. Welcome to the group, Mikey boy! Also, one of the other benefits of taking the Surfer is that he can automatically recover from one random condition per turn, which I found out later is very useful. This time I decided to make this character a dwarf because anyone as a dwarf, regardless of gender, gets this hilariously oversized beard, which I primarily went with because I thought it looked funny. I also rolled a mage as well, mostly so I could do what most spellcasters type do in any RPG, cast nothing but Fireball! Unfortunately, our new mage started at level 1, so that did require some small amount of grinding till I got to the point where I couldn't be bothered to grind anymore, and moved on to the next quest, which introduced a new aspect to the game: dungeons. Dungeons in this game work pretty simply. Just tap the room that's adjacent to you that you want to go to, and then read what the DM describes to you on what happens next, which usually resulted in either nothing, a fight, or getting a second or third boulder trap in a row. After a bit of a dungeon crawl later, we finally found the final boss, at which point we leapt into the fray and promptly ended up wiping. After resurrecting everybody, thank God for the Goth's passive, and healing everybody up with what limited healing items I had, we leapt back into the fray once again and wiped a second time. Thankfully, if you choose to leave the dungeon, it takes you back to the nearest village or town, so once everybody was resurrected, again, and had a quick rest at the inn, we went straight back to the dungeon to try again. From the start. This time, however, I didn't even make it to the boss, because I thought it would be a great idea to open a crypt that very clearly said "do not touch," and got promptly slaughtered by the skeleton that came out. Annoyed, I decided it was best we went back to the vault and leveled up a bit, during which time I found a great way to use the fireball. That being, cast it on the middle back row enemy and have many dots now! After getting everyone up a level, I returned to the dungeon to finally take the boss down, who then promptly went and one-shotted the cleric. There are no words to describe my rage! Thankfully, with the combined effort of my warrior, mage, and a lot of fireball spam, I was able to take him down. Finally. In celebration of this, I decided the best thing to do was to turn straight back around and do it 2 more times for some side quests. The first one was only at the entrance, so I didn't have to go far, and the second one helped me unlock the ninja class, which I will most certainly be using later. Eventually we moved back to the main quest, heading towards the next settlement. However, to get there, we needed to get past a troll, who not only had the gall to sit there complaining about how OP stuff was, but also tried to charge me 15k to pass over the bridge. Naturally, I tried to beat the snot out of him instead. 3 guesses on how well that turned out. Second attempt later, we made it through to Big Town. No, seriously, that's its name. Thankfully, I didn't roll a 1 while travelling there, end up getting lost in the woods and have half the party wipe. Yes, that can actually happen. I don't have any footage of it, sadly, because it happened in my other game, so you'll have to take my word on that. It really did happen. Anyway, having arrived, I decided to give this game's crafting system a try, and instead of wasting 1200 gold randomly throwing items at it, I decided it was the best idea to use the recipe list instead. To which I then crafted myself a torch and a milkshake. Not the most exciting things in the world, but I'm sure they could be useful later on. After catching up with the main villain, losing track of him, and fighting a bunch of foul bears, well, that was pretty much it. I'd gotten to where I'd stopped on my other game, so I figured this was a good enough place to stop for now. What did I think of the game? Yeah, it was pretty good. Certainly something I would use to kill some time, and at least with something like this, you have a clear goal to aim for. Not to mention there's the DLC adventures that I would be interested in buying. So yeah, give it a try. Link is in the description down below, and the game is available for both iOS and Android. Now, if only I could get a legendary flaming sword of some description. Yeah, that'll work.